周日長談深入時事話題。BC 省政府一次過開除晒所有嘅 school board， 引起好大嘅風波。好多人就話一個由民選嘅 school board 學校局嘅成員，點解政府話開除就可以開除㗎？佢哋唔係人民選出嚟嘅咩？今日我哋請到嘅貴賓咧係 Penny Noble， 係被開除嘅 Vancouver School Board Trustee。Penny, how are you?
Good, thank you.
You were elected by the people, and yet you're fired.
That's right.
What do you feel?
Well, I was disappointed in some ways because I ran for public office to be able to do some good, and I hoped to be able to do some good. But while I'm disappointed not to be able to do that, the decision was the right one. The Minister of Education made the right decision to fire the Vancouver School Board because the board broke the law. And if you break the law, there must be consequences. So what happened was that the school board back in June voted against putting in a balanced budget. Now there's an act in British Columbia, the BC School Act, and that act very clearly states that each school board in the province must submit a balanced budget by the end of June. The Vancouver School Board was the only one out of 60 school boards that did not do that. In past history, when boards have done that, they've all been fired. And in fact, the trustees that chose to vote against the budget, which was 5 out of the 9, they knew that it was likely they would be fired, and they said that. They said, we're willing to be fired over this. So it shouldn't come as any surprise to anyone. That actually is the right thing to do. It's the responsible thing to do.
When you say it's the right thing to do you also indicate that as an education, when you are involved in education, it is also something that you need to educate the next generation, is that when you break the law, there is some consequences. Is it fair for me to kind of infer your statement in this way?
Well, I think so. I think that it's not a good example to show children that if you do something that is breaking the rules, there are no consequences for that. There do need to be consequences, but particularly in this instance, we all knew what the consequences were likely to be. Mm-hmm. We all knew that if you don't submit a balanced budget as a school board, you're breaking the School Act, and it's very likely you will get fired. And the minister has the right to do that. And while it may be disappointing, I can't see that there was any other option other than to do that.
So it was expected. But I want to also help our audience understand one thing is that all the local governments, even municipalities, even the city, every year when they pass a budget, it has to be a balanced budget. It's written in the community charter, it's written in the Vancouver charter. It's the law that all local governments' budget has to be a balanced budget. And so it is something not specifically targeted towards school board. It is kind of fair and equal to everyone. That local government has the balanced budget and no debts. Okay, so that is the law. School Act that governs your body, but you are elected by the people. So compared to the Ministry of Education, what is your responsibility? People are thinking there is a Ministry of Education and there is a school board, and they fight all the time, and each of them say that you are stepping on my toe, I'm doing my right. What's wrong with it? Can you give us a clear picture of what is your job and what's your relationship with the Ministry of Education?
Well, first of all, I don't think every school board fights with the ministry. Unfortunately, this has been something endemic in the Vancouver School Board. But in terms of our role as trustees, again, that's very clearly laid out in the School Act. And it says the role is to co-govern with the province of British Columbia.
What does it mean by co-govern?
Co-government means to my interpretation, because of course that's open to interpretation, my interpretation is that our role is to govern alongside the province. So that is the role, is to govern together with the province. We're the intermediaries in between, however, because we're there locally at each school district level between the government and the people, the students and the parents and so forth.
So there is an act, which is the law. And there are regulations and there are policies to implement this law. In the lower level of regulations, rules and regulations that governs the school board and also the policies that the school board will set up, is there a clear line about this is school board's job, this is the government's job, this is rubber stamping, this is your own initiative and your creativities and your responsible or your accountability to the community? How do you handle these fine lines?
Well, I think that's one of the big challenges. I think that's one of the huge challenges in what's happening with school boards generally, not just in Vancouver. It's how do you interpret that? And even when you're running as a candidate, I don't necessarily think that everybody is really clear on what their role is as a trustee, and I think that's open to interpretation. For me and for my other NPA, Nonpartisan Association trustees, 4 of us, we took the School Act seriously, so we were guided by our role as being to co-govern. But there are others that think their role should be to advocate, and that's all they do. That's their primary motive and their primary mission is to advocate. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Advocacy in terms of listening to the community, listening to parents, representing them is important, but it must not be the only thing. The primary role is to co-govern. And within there, you have to try to balance how can you be an advocate at the same time. But I would say that if somebody truly wants to be an advocate for something, they can't be part of the organization they want to advocate against. It's very difficult to be co-governing and advocate. I would say they should belong to a separate organization, like one of these parents groups who have the freedom to go out and do whatever they want and say whatever they want to the government. I do think that when we're elected to take on a role that is outlined under the School Act, I think we need to look at that and be clear on what that is. And I think that's a bit of a challenge. I don't think it's necessarily clear. Even though it says the role is to co-govern, that's open to interpretation. Everybody might have a different interpretation. What does that actually look like?
So do you believe that all these problems basically is actually the baby of the School Act's imperfection?
No, I don't. I think the problems are to do with totally individual circumstances and individuals on the school board. You know, the great thing about democracy is anyone can be elected.
Yes.
The downside, perhaps, is that they each have their own ideology and they each have their own political stance that they wish to put forward. I think the challenge is that the school board, certainly in Vancouver, has become way too political. I think people are putting their own political views ahead of what is truly best for the kids of Vancouver in a big picture sense. What's going to be the best thing for the district overall? What's going to be the best thing going into the future? And there's just too much politicking going on. That, to me, is at the crux of the problem.
I still want to dig further into the roles between the Ministry of Education and the school board. Can we interpret that, my first question, can we interpret that as the Ministry of Education is like the board of an organization, and the school board is the management that helps to manage the policy or direction that is set up by the board?
No, I wouldn't describe it that way.
Not even that?
No, the government of the day, the province, is the provincial government who has the budgets for education in the province. So they have their own management structure. So no, the school board is not the management structure of the government. The school board is made up of elected officials, elected people. So no, I wouldn't describe it that way. I think it's unclear to a lot of people. I think it's unclear even to people who are running what the exact role is, and people tend to interpret it how they see fit. And that's a bit of a challenge. There's all different interpretations as to what your role really is. Some people will say that some people feel that their role is to do what parents tell them. Now, parents certainly have a voice, but that's only one voice. There's also all the people that got you elected. So there's a whole lot of people to represent when you're elected. it's an unusual situation. There really is no other situation like the provincial government and the school board, elected people, and then the actual board itself, the district, which has all the staff, the school board staff. So it's pretty hard to define it really closely, and I think that is the challenge.
So, since it has its legal structure, statute structure is not clear, so it really depends on the individuals or the composition of the board to try to make it work.
Well, I think the legal stature is clear. That's clear. You co-govern, you pass a balanced budget. That's clear. There's nothing complicated about that. Where it gets complicated is that people are running for public office who are parts of different political parties, and they are putting the agendas of their parties sometimes ahead of what is good for the district. That's where it gets confusing. And they may campaign on a particular mandate or mission, and that's what they get elected to do. The people that elected them aren't really aware that there is this school act with this mandate.
Okay, the people who elected you have a different interpretation of what exactly under the law or the statute structure, what your role and function is. That's a big question. Let's take a break and we'll come back to this very crucial question. 我哋休息一陣，再繼續同你傾下呢個省政府到底有咩權力可以開除晒成個 school board 呢？